Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host, and today we're going to be talking about impending tariffs on cocoa and chocolate here in the United States and what you can do as someone who might be a chocolate maker, a confectioner, or just someone who loves chocolate, what you might be able to do to intervene and suggest to the current administration that what they do is to exempt cocoa products and coffee from the list of things that tariffs are going to start applying to in just about a week from now, on the 1st of August. Now, before that, what I want to do is I want to go and point out that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of The Chocolate Life. And here is the homepage of The Chocolate Life right now. You can go there. There's a link to every single episode of Pod Save Chocolate. There's over 1,600 posts spanning most of the last 15 years that The Chocolate Life has been around. And your support as a free member or a premium member makes this channel happen. So go click up on the green button, the account button, and join and become a member today. And then like, subscribe, click bells, do all the things that you can do on YouTube. And finally, if no matter where you're connected from, if you're connected on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, go into the live chat, go into the comments, let me know where in the world you are connecting from. And then also, you know what? I'm doing this completely anonymously. Let me know where in the world you are connecting from, and I'll get that shout out up on screen. And if you have a question or comment about anything I'm going to talk about over the course of the episode, also get it into the comments, get it into the live chat, and I will respond to it. Now, if it looks like I'm a little discombobulated, it is because I am a little discombobulated. What I'm doing is I'm using a new camera setup, and I have to look at a new place than I'm used to looking. I'm not looking down at the camera, which is right front and center of my screen. I'm looking up at a different camera. So this is the first time I've done it for an episode, and it's going to take a little while getting used to it. And then it means that I'm actually looking further away when I look at my screen and all that kind of stuff. But I just let me know what you think. It's a higher quality camera. It's crisper. And as you can see, it's using the Apple continuity services. And so it's following me around so that I stay in screen. If that's really annoying, let me know and I will turn it off. But with all that said, let us go to the post for today's episode. And this is the post for today's episode, Protest the Tariffs on Cocoa. A little fun little sculpture of the head of the current president with a call to action. And the idea of the post for every episode is that what I'm doing is I'm doing a run of show. This is the order of things that I'm going to talk about during the course of the episode. And if there are links and other references, resources that are talked about, they will be on this page, either before the episode starts or shortly after the episode is live. So that way you don't have to follow along, look for URLs, all this kind of stuff. All the links and all the resources are going to be in the post. So what I am responding to when we get down to what the TLDR is that late last week, Emily Stone, who was one of the founders, maybe the founder, but certainly a co-founder of Uncommon Cacao, in a group on Facebook, the Well-Tempered group on Facebook, posted that the Trump administration was considering exempting cocoa products, and coffee from the tariffs, right, that are going to start to be imposed on the 1st of August. And what she did is she just suggests that we all contact our state senators and our state representatives and send them a form email or a message and letting them know what we think. We want their support in voting against the tariffs or exempting cocoa products. So cocoa products, we mean derivatives, which would be cocoa liquor, cocoa butter, nibs, uh, right? And maybe even chocolate. Maybe they were exempt all of those things from imports. I mean, with all of the increases in the price of cocoa and other inflationary tendencies, which have had an impact on your business over the course of the last year or three, adding 10% or 30% tariffs on top of that for the price of cocoa, cocoa butter, cocoa beans, cocoa butter, everything that is necessary for making chocolate would place an undue burden on you, the chocolate maker, and even you, who is the chocolate fan. So, what can you do? If you're an American citizen, you can go and contact your state representatives. And the question is, how do you go do that? So, there are two parts of it. The first one of which is that Emily provided, let me go over here, Emily provided a form letter that is embedded in the post on the Chocolate Life. I'll show you that. But what you would do is you would go download this form letter and you would personalize it. So you would add your name, your address, all this information. What you wouldn't do to start off is you wouldn't fill out this information, right? About who you are addressing, right? Because that needs to be personalized on a recipient by recipient basis. But there is stock information at the front, there's stock information at the bottom. And what you also want to do is you want to go and update the text that is in yellow. So you want to point out, am I a business owner? Am I a chocolate manufacturer? Am I a chocolatier? I am an importer. Am I a consumer? You want to let your representative know what your perspective is, why you're asking for this. And I would suggest that if you fill multiple roles, as we all do, you could be a chocolate manufacturer and also just a fan and lover of chocolate. So I would go and make sure that you point that out. Now there's this highlighted here, which is other points you want to make. Right. And what I might point out is, for example, is that if you live in the state of Ohio, then two of the three largest companies in the world that produce products with chocolate in them, which are Mars and Mondelez, are headquartered in Chicago. If you live in Pennsylvania, Hershey is headquartered in Pennsylvania. What you probably want to do is you probably want to say, as a resident of the state of Ohio, right, you may not know that two of the largest companies in the world, right, who are in this, who will be affected, include these companies. And what I have done in the comments for the post is I've included, oh, that's interesting. Huh. Where'd it go? Here we go. I didn't do it in the comments. I did it here. Additional info to consider adding to your letters, right? I thought I put it in the comments, right? Which is the U.S. chocolate industry as a whole accounted for over 24 billion in sales in 2023. You want to let them know that this is a not inconsiderate, not small industry, not incons. My mind is at a blank for the right word there, right? And that it also employs tens of thousands of skilled workers in the United States. These companies employ these workers, and that 3 of the top 10 biggest chocolate confectionery snack companies in the world are headquartered in the US with a combined sales of $70 billion, which is insane, right? And Mondelez and Mars are in Ohio, and Hershey is in Pennsylvania. You want to point out the economic impact to the state, right, that will be had because of the introduction to the tariffs. If there's another 30% on top of the cost of imported cocoa beans, what does that mean to what it is that Mondelez, Mars, and Hershey is going to do? Now, you may not like these companies. I get it, right? But what we're doing here is we need to, for a few seconds, set aside those personal animosities and use the fact that these are huge employers in the United States and in the districts that these representatives, right, represents, whether it's the state of Ohio or in Ohio. And in Chicago, we're also talking about Blommer, right, which is now owned by a Japanese company, Fuji Oil. There, you can play on those aspects of things to let your state representatives know what the effect is in their particular state. Now, we don't have any big chocolate makers here in Arizona, right? So there's no big companies like Mars or Mondelez or Hershey in Arizona, but we do have a number of award-winning. So I live in Arizona at the moment, in case that wasn't obvious. We do have a number of very highly respected, internationally recognized chocolate companies here in Arizona, most of them in the Phoenix area. And when I am personalizing my version of this, what I do is I included that information. So what I did when I put together the letter that I was sending to my representatives, I included in the other points that I wanted to make, I added the information about the US chocolate industry, about Hershey, Mondelez, and Mars and their employment and what this might do, right? Increased import costs, supply chain disruptions, higher prices, trade retaliation, all of those things which are in the form letter, right, are going to reinforce the point you're making about this is what's in it for the people in my state, especially, right? And I think it's really important to focus your representative. I mean, so if you're in Missouri, mention, Askinosie, if, Encore in Kansas City. If you're in Georgia, I mean, just point to local chocolate makers. And if you're in New York, talk about Fruition. If you just talk about the companies that you know and that you love that are in the state where you live, right, that these representatives may or may not know, right, but are going to point out the local impact that this is likely to have to their constituents. Many of them might be voters as well. Really important thing to talk about when you go and do that. So that's it. You have on the post for the Chocolate Life, you have a link here. Download this template. Let me go and share the page. Go and use this template. So here is the additional info that you need to consider. And above it is use the template. So click the download link. It'll be a docx file. You can open it up. It will look like this without the highlights. And you just fill it out. Fill out your information. And then what you're going to do is you're going to use this as a template to copy and paste into the form that your representative is going to have. That's it. You want to go and do that. And so there is a link also on this page in the Chocolate Life that says, go find your representative. Let me walk you through that because it was a little confusing to me. So what I've done here is I have gone down one part of the rabbit hole to try to work at the congress.gov website to help you navigate it, because it is not at all straightforward if you just go straight to the congress.gov website. The first thing you want to do is you want to go through, and from this drop-down list in the upper left-hand corner, you're not worried about the current Congress, you're not worried about all of Congress. What you want to know is you want to know about the members of Congress. So highlight that, right? And then what you want to do in the search box just to the right, you want to type in the state that you're interested in. And when you get that done, you'll see that there's this refined by here. Whoops. And it says Arizona and members. So that's the first step. Now what you're going to do is you're going to scroll down, and you want to, this members will be already highlighted, right? No, you want to click on members. I'm sorry, click on members, right? And then what you want to do is you want to go click on the current term. So this is like the 119th Congress. And so you're going to go click and you're going to highlight that. And what's going to happen is you'll see that I have 10 House members and 2 Senate members, right? So I need to know that I need to go visit the contact forms of 12 different people and send them either an email or send them the text of the form letter in the body of their email. So I've already done this to Ruben Gallego and other people, but I haven't done it to Senator Kelly. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Senator Kelly because he's somebody I need to do. Now, in order to make things really, really simple for you, just click on contact right here. Right? And what will happen is that you will be taken to their page on the congress.gov website. So kelly.senate.gov, all right, his contact form. Right? And then what you're going to do is you're going to scroll down. You need to add your Mr. or Ms. It may be they're going to ask you to identify yourself, not required. So if you don't want to, if you're non-binary, you're not worried about you don't want to disclose titles or things like that. You don't need to worry about it. You add your first name and your last name. They're going to require, because they're going to assume that you're a voter. They want to know that you're a voter. So from their address, they'll get your voting district, among other things. So you give them the address, you give them a phone number. I use a particular uh, password program, and what it will do is it'll autofill this for me. So most of this, so I don't need to fill it by hand once I start entering the information. And then what you'll do is you'll select an issue. So agriculture, no. Animal rights, I would say budget is the place to go talk about it. Maybe economic development. If you know anything about your particular senator or representative, you might want to choose which one of those to go to. But it is probably either going to be budget, economic, and development. That seems to make the most sense. So select one of those things. I'm going to say economic development because it assumes that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the message subject from my, right? Here's the message subject, request remove tariffs on here, and then go to, go here, right? Message subject. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste the message, right? I don't think Senator Kelly needs to respond to me. I'm not going to sign up. That's what I would do for Senator Kelly. Right? And what I suggest that you do, I'm going to hide this. What I'm going to suggest that you do is that you go and do this for each one of your state representatives. Right? So I'm going to get done here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the search results. Here's Senator Gallego or Senator Crane. I'm going to go back. I'm not going to use the navigation, which is here. I'm going to use the back arrow in the browser tab. And then I'm going to go find the next representative that I want to talk to. Now, again, I don't know anything. So I believe that I'm in District 7 up here. I may be wrong. I'd have to go and look at this. But what I would do is I might take a quick look at each one of these representatives and their voting records, and to find out, again, whether or not it would be economic development, budget, or if there's some other hot button issue that this particular representative wants to know. One of my representatives, actually, I believe it is Raul Grijalva, who passed recently. There was just a special election last weekend, and his daughter is currently was voted in to take his seat until the general election in November. So that's where District 7 comes in. I believe it's down in the Phoenix area. And so because companies like Stone Grinds and Zax and Embers, we also have Monsoon, which is down in Tucson. I believe what I would point out that, for me here in Arizona, these are the companies that are in your district that are going to be directly affected by what you're doing. Do a little bit of homework. Let them know that even though it is a form letter, you've been able to personalize it. And then what you should do is the deadline for doing this is going to be the 31st of July. And ideally, you want to give them an opportunity to think about it and respond to it before then. So I would not wait until the 31st of July. I would do it yesterday if you had. I haven't completed my list. I just want to let you know I haven't completed the list because I wanted to go through the process and show you how it is. But I do plan to complete the letters that I'm sending to all of my Senate and House representatives today. I've made that commitment to myself. I will get it done, and we'll get through it. So I just want to let you know that there is a potential. The Trump administration has signaled that they are open to considering, right, exempting cocoa beans, cocoa products, derivados, derivatives, right, specifically liquor, butter, powder, nibs, and green coffee beans from any increase in import tariffs, right? And the idea of this write-in campaign is to let them know that you support exempting coffee and cocoa products from these new tariffs. And you're going to let them know why, who you are, why, and how this might affect companies that are in their district. So I wanted to give you, and if you go to the page on the Chocolate Life, let me look down at my screen. Again, it's a little further away than it's been in previous episodes. So if you go to the post on the Chocolate Life, let me get over there and show it to you. If you go over to the post on the Chocolate Life, you'll find, oh, here is the link to find your representative. Again, click on members, type in the state, you get the idea. You'll be able to figure out who they are and then scroll through the results. And then you can use this link to download the document template that you can edit. And to do that today, here is some additional information to consider. So number one, who, what, where, why. One, again, to summarize this portion of the episode, the Trump administration is considering exempting cocoa products and coffee from the new tariffs. If you are a chocolate maker, if you are a confectioner, a fan of chocolate, live in the United States, you have a voice. What we're asking you to do is contact both of your senators and all of your House representatives and tell them you're opposed to the tariffs and why, and then do it today if possible. You have everything you need on this page to get it done. And if you look at my explanation on how to navigate the Congress website to find out who your members are, if you don't know who your senators and members are, and how to find their contact forms, all of that is, if you rewind the video, you'll find all of the instructions for doing that. Right? And that is the major point that I wanted to make with today's episode. But what I do want to do before, and if anybody's got a question, go into the comments. Let me know what you think. Do you have a question about what I'm doing? If you're from a particular state and you have a question about how you might tailor your letter to your senators and your representatives, put it in the comments. Let me know what you think. Do you think this is worth the effort? Do you think that things are so far gone? I try not to make the channel too much about politics, but I think unfortunately in this particular case, we do need to make it about politics because it's really important. A lot of businesses are struggling. Adding tariffs on top of what it is that they're doing is just going to make things more challenging. Although what I want to say, I mean, this is interesting. I had a conversation with a colleague of mine who is in Europe over the weekend, yesterday morning, and they're a specialty chocolate maker, and so they've been paying high prices for specialty beans for quite some time. And they said that one of the things that's interesting about the high price of cocoa is that the prices of their products are now directly price competitive with the industrial chocolate makers in terms of their high-end brands. So if there was a big industrial chocolate maker who was doing a single origin couverture, for example, the specialty chocolate maker is going, you know what? Sorry, I just hit the desk. Our chocolate is now basically the same price to these big industrial chocolate makers. And now what you can do if you are buying in couverture, you can now support a small maker with history that's doing the right things, right? So it is a rare economy which doesn't have silver lining, and so until it was pointed out to me yesterday, it was not intuitively obvious that the high price of cocoa represents an opportunity for specialty chocolate makers relative to a certain segment of the marketplace that industrial chocolate makers have been trying to enter. And in fact, several industrial chocolate makers, and we're talking about Big 10, global chocolate suppliers, so not companies that are selling to retail like Mondelez and Mars and Hershey, but companies that are selling to Mondelez and Mars and Hershey and to smaller confectioners down the line. That specialty chocolate is now price competitive, which is really interesting. It hadn't occurred to me to think about it that way, but I counsel you to think about it that way. There are opportunities here that can be explored and exploited when you think about those things, right? But next, what I want to do is I want to talk about other regulation. So I saw in my feed yesterday this article, which was that the FDA is targeting, so very aggressive language, but it's on the Food Business News website. And this link is not in the post for today, but I will put this link in the post. right? So you can take a look at it. The FDA is targeting 52 food standards of identity for termination, which makes you wonder, is this like a Trump administration thing? What the heck is going on? Right? Why are they targeting 52 standards of identity? And you look through this, and under this was announced last week, the FDA would squash, which means they would cancel. I mean, they're using really, squash is a food term, so I suppose that makes sense, right? SOI is standard of identity in a number of product segments, right? And what they're doing it is that many of the standards have outlived their usefulness and may even stifle innovation in making food easier to produce or providing consumers healthier choices. Antiquated food standards are no longer serving to protect consumers. And so you kind of wonder what the heck is going on here, right? Is this part of the current administration's undermining of the regulatory framework? We're just get rid of stuff, up and down just because we want to break things apart. And I had somebody contact me yesterday and said, "Hey, Clay, what do you think about this?" Because there are 3 vanilla products, which are among the 52, which are on the chopping block for eliminating the standard of identity. What do you think? So the first thing to understand is if you actually do the history of this, what you'll do is you'll find that the executive order which brought this all about, right, it does not originate with the Trump administration. It originates with Obama, right? And it's a general executive order to go through and say if there are out of date regulations which are having an economic impact to industry in general of more than $100 million per year, what you want to do is you want to find a way to phase out those regulations because they're getting in the way. So that's where it is. 1998? I don't know. It's got to be later than that. I forget exactly, but it is an Obama era um, policy. And then there was a Trump interruption and a Biden interruption. And I can provide some of the history of that because I did a little bit of research on what the executive orders were that were invoked to do this. And so one of the questions I was asked is, listen, Clay, what I do is I see this, shutting down of regulations, and is it just a Trump thing? And the answer, and should we think of this as being sinister in any way? And the answer to the question is no. We don't need to think of this as being sinister, right? Because the even though the timing seems sinister, it turns out that the impetus for doing this is now, at least 15 years old. So I don't see anything sinister in it. But let's go and take a little bit of look at some of the other things that we're talking about. So let's go look at the Federal Register. What does the Federal Register say? Well, so the first thing we'll notice is that this article in Food Business News talks about 52 standards of identity. And so it turns out that there isn't only one, right, proposed rule change, so a proposed rule, right? It turns out that there are at least 3. So one of them is designed to revoke 23 standards of identity for foods. And you look around and you figure out what's going on here, right? And what are the reason why they're doing it? It says, we are taking this action because we tentatively conclude that these standards are no longer necessary to promote honesty and fair dealing in the interest of consumers. And one of the things that you look at when you go through and you look at what the foods are. So, for example, it's not in this one, it's in another one. They're talking about eliminating the standards of identity for cheese. And it turns out that it's about eliminating standards of identity for cheese products which aren't being manufactured in the United States or aren't being sold in the United States or sold in very, very small quantities. And so the overhead associated, the burden associated with administering these rules is just too high. And so they just want to get rid of them. So I suggest that what you do is go take a look at in the Federal Register. I'll put the links to this in the post on the Chocolate Life. So here's another one. So here's an 11. So 11 products not currently sold, right? So let's go back to the previous one, right? So standards of identity, right? It doesn't talk about why. This one is talked about 11 products not currently sold. And what are those products? Again, we scroll down, and what we do is we find that these 11 products, um, they've done their homework. We have to scroll down. We need to find what they are. They're in canned vegetables, which is ironic because a big canned vegetable company has just filed for bankruptcy. Right? But you can go through and go take a look at this and see what it is that's actually going on. And you'll find that these have been in the work for quite some time. So here is the entire list. And I'll put this list, the link to this page, right? What's going on. And the particular rulemaking that I was asked about was these three vanilla products. And there was some confusion because, oh my gosh, they're relaxing the standards of identity around vanilla and vanilla extract and vanilla products and things like that. But we need to look at the regulation and what is being proposed very, very carefully. So what this says is that we're going to be, right, eliminating the standard of identity for these three products, sections 169, 180, 181, and 182. And notice that they're vanilla vanillin. So they are mixtures of vanilla and vanillin, which is a synthetic form of vanilla, in three different formats. And so, in order to go figure out what this all means, what you need to do is you need to go to the Code of Federal Regulations. So, ECFR, the Electronic Code of Federal Regulations. You need to go to Title 21, which is basically about food, right? Chapter 1, Subchapter B, Subpart B. Let's go back one page. And what you'll do is you'll find in this section 169, right? This is a section covering food dressings and flavorings, right? And mayonnaise is in here, and salad dressing is in here. And then we have this list of things which are related to vanilla. Let's zoom in, and so you can see it a little more closely, right? And what we find is that these three down here, right? Right, vanilla vanillin extract, vanilla vanillin flavoring, vanilla vanillin powder. These are the three standards of identity, which are phased for which are set for the chopping block. Right, they will be xed out at the next time this is updated whenever the rulemaking is agreed to. If you're at all opposed to this, there are when you go to these pages. Um, um, There is a summary, there's an addresses. If you want to submit anything to the FDA saying you're opposed, there are the rules, there are the procedures you need to follow if you are object to any of these proposed rulemaking changes. But what I want to do is I want to go back to ECFR 21. So the question was, oh my gosh, they're undermining, not the question, but the concern was the Trump administration is undermining vanilla, right? And vanilla extract and the standards for vanilla extracts and that we use in chocolated confections. Right? And so if I'm a manufacturer, I'm Nielsen Massey, for example, and I'm manufacturing a vanilla extract or a concentrated vanilla extract that you are going to use as a flavoring in a ganache, you're going to use it as a flavoring in a cake, you're going to use it for whatever reason, right? Or is the federal government, is the FDA, is the Trump FDA, right? Just going to throw that out so that anybody can do anything they want willy-nilly with vanilla? And the answer to that question is no, that's not what this is about. What it is about is there are three forms of vanilla, right? Flavorings, right? Which incorporate vanilla and vanillin. And these were popular the last time we looked at these rules, which is 1993, so 30 some odd years ago, but nobody seems to be making them anymore. And so why not just get rid of the standards of identity if nobody's making them anymore? So let's look at, vanilla vanillin extract. So what is that? So vanilla vanillin extract conforms to the definition and standard identity, right? It needs to be conforms to the standard identity for vanilla and vanillin. So that's part of this, and is subject to any requirement for label statement of ingredients. So, if you need to declare the it on the label of whatever food you're producing. There is a section 169 by 175, which, as I recall, has to do. Oh, this talks about what vanilla is, right? So, right, except that for each unit of vanilla constituent, as defined elsewhere, so it's recursive. They'll find that each standard of identity often points to multiple other points in the standard of identity or the regulatory framework here. So you might have to visit 3 or 4 or more pages in order to figure out exactly what's going on. But basically, it says that for each unit of vanilla, right, contains not more than 1 ounce of added vanillin. So in order to save money, what a manufacturer of a vanilla vanillin extract has done is they've substituted out some of the real vanilla extract with some vanillin. And there is a maximum limit if you want to be able to identify your product as vanilla vanillin extract. That's what this says, right? And if you're going to use it on a product label, right, because it's an ingredient and you're using enough of it that it needs to be declared on the product label, here's how it needs to be identified on the ingredient label. Right? So that's what that is. Let's go back a page and let's go look at vanilla vanillin flavoring. And what we'll do is we'll see that it's pretty much the same thing. So this is an ethyl alcohol extraction, right? It's got to be alcohol less than 35% by volume, right? There needs, again, it's a combination of vanilla and vanillin. And apparently what's going on here is this used to be fairly common back in, prior to the 1990s, maybe into the 1960s, 70s. I mean, I don't know when this was first introduced as a standard of identity. It's not always the easiest thing to do to find out when a particular standard of identity was first added to um, to the Code of Federal Regulation. But notice that what it hasn't done, the regulations are not going to be changed. So the standard of identity for what constitutes vanilla extract is not being changed, right? And this is up to date as of last Friday, right? Last amended last Thursday, right? So, but if you want to know what vanilla extract is, it is an aqueous solution of ethyl alcohol, right? And it can also include glycerin, propylene glycol, sugar, including invert sugar, dextrose, and corn syrup, including dried corn syrup solids. And it's called vanilla extract or extract of vanilla. So, vanilla extract, the standard of identity is not being changed. That we have concentrated vanilla extract. So there's a definition of that. It might be called twofold or fourfold, right? So that definition is not being changed. That's standard of identity. Vanilla flavoring, that is not being changed. The concentrated vanilla flavoring, that is not being changed. The same thing is true for vanilla powder. So there are no changes to the standard identity of most of the forms of vanilla. There's no vanilla bean paste. I'd have to go figure out if that is in fact covered by any of these other standards of identity. But number one, you don't have to worry about the standards of identity which are being changed here, the 52 standards, targets 52 standards. And, this is very, very aggressive language. And it's designed for clickbait, I think, to get people overly concerned about what it is that's happening. I wouldn't necessarily pay too much attention to it in that respect, right? But what you want to do is take care to understand this and not overreact, right? Which is easy for many people to do because many people get triggered by the constant drumbeat of regulations related to environmental safety and food safety and health and wellness being overturned by the current administration. The original impetus for many of these changes, right, goes back to the Obama administration. It's just taken this long for the slow wheels of government to get to the point where they're ready to make their recommendations. It has been through the Obama, then Trump, and then Biden, and back to Trump. This is just, I want to say, coincidence of timing. This is just how long it's taken. So it's coming out. It isn't because the Trump administration just decided in the last 4 months to do this. There doesn't appear to be anything sinister like that in terms of this. The other thing is, it's really important to go and read closely what the report is saying, and then to follow the links in the report. So the FDA is going to quash the SOI. Here is the list of all the products, right? So why are they changing or getting rid of the standard of identity for low sodium cheddar and low sodium Colby? One of the things that I don't necessarily find for all of these is the exact rationale for it. We know why vanillin is, because nobody's making these vanillin products, is nobody's making them anymore, or very few people are making them anymore. But I don't understand artificially sweet. Maybe nobody's really artificially sweetened canned cherries. I mean, maybe artificially sweetened canned figs. Oh gosh. Anyway, just, yeah, maybe that made sense in the 60s or 70s. Canned seedless grapes. Maybe we don't need standards of identity for these things if nobody's making them. Or here's another thing. It may be that um, the definition, the standard of identity for this one, I'd have to go look it up, talks about sweeteners which were available in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and isn't talking about sweeteners that are available today. That could be another reason to change them. I haven't gone and looked in them. I was really only wanted to focus on vanilla because, vanilla and chocolate are very, very closely related. So you want to go look at that. You want to go look at what the direct and final rule is, right? To the extent that you can, you want to read slowly what this addresses. You want to know what it is? No, not what it, oh, that's the addresses. So what the summary is, why are they doing it? They're no longer necessary to promote honesty and fair dealing, right? What this also is not obvious here, and I do want to mention it, is that when we were looking at the vanilla guidelines in CFR here, you'll notice that when we went to vanilla vanillin, right, it referred to two other sections, 169, 179, and 169.3c. So it referred to other sections as the standards identity. If you were to do anything with vanilla vanillin, right, it would still be subject to these other regulations, other aspects of the standards of identity. And so it still need to conform. It just might say, why is there this 1 ounce limit, for example, in the extract? What is that all about? Why? Right? It's, the constituent parts still need to conform to the standard of identity. So it's really important to understand what it is that is being done when it comes to changing the food standards. So one of the other rules, there is some history, and go through and read the article, and then figure out what it's all about. There is, um, it's not here. I need to go figure out where it was. There are some specifics about which executive orders are related to this. They're not in this. I don't know how I got to it. I'll have to go find it again. It's in another browser, and I'll get to it. But also put the link to the executive orders which are associated with this, and you can get a sense of the history of them as well. So that's really, really important. And that's it for today. I wanted to give everybody a clue as to a heads up. Number one, right? Please, everyone, for the love of chocolate, right? If you are in fact concerned about the current administration's threat to impose tariffs, right? And specifically the tariffs on cocoa beans, cocoa products, and coffee, please follow the instructions in this video and the resources that are on this page, and go contact your state senator and your state representatives as soon as possible and let them know that you oppose the imposition of tariffs. You want cocoa products, and coffee exempted from these new tariff regulations. Do that today, or do it tomorrow. Don't wait until the weekend to do it. Give them the representatives and their staff time to process this, right? If you can, again, really importantly, personalize it, right? If you have someone in your state that you love who does great work, point to the economic disruption that's going to happen in your state if the tariffs are going to be enacted. You want to make sure that the representative knows what's at stake for them and for, excuse me, their voters. Really, 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 really key. And then finally, if somebody comes to you, or secondly, right, if somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, you know, it appears that there's, some I can interpret some action of the current administration, sorry, um, as a conspiracy," right? Do your homework, do some due diligence before you go and retweet, before you go and copy on Facebook, before you go and just throw it out there into the universe. Fortunately, this colleague of mine said, "Hey, Clay, did you see this notice? What do you think of this notice?" Right? And I had a chance to do some research to figure out what it is was going on, and then follow up and say, okay, we don't have to worry. This is not a conspiracy. This is not something that's been cooked up since the Trump administration came into office on the 21st of January. This is something that's been in the works for more than a decade. So right. We don't need to worry about that. And by the way, you're concerned that what's going to happen is we're taking this ingredient that we love, vanilla, which is a large part of chocolate for many, many people. When it comes to the standards of identity for the forms of vanilla that are being used in chocolate, we don't have to worry that the regulations which cover food purity and food safety are being undermined in any way. So please, everybody, no matter what it is, when you have somebody making a representation, take a moment. Don't just retweet it without going and doing your own research. And by doing research, I mean don't just ask Google or don't just ask ChatGPT. Go find an original source, a primary source yourself. Find the primary source, look through the links, and from the links on that source, see if you can backtrack them to their sources and understand to some extent what the nuances are. And this is one of the reasons why I'm doing this, right? Is that my response was, "What?" Right? So I saw it in my feed, and then somebody sent me an email about it and saying, "What is this all about? I don't understand what this is all about." And it took a while. I mean, I spent 15 minutes to half an hour going through and tracking things down, but I thought it was important to be able to respond to the person who asked me the question in a detailed manner to alleviate their fears, right? Number one, that this was a conspiracy, and number two, what's going to happen to vanilla, right? And now the person who reached out to me is not going to be fanning flames without knowledge, right? They now have right the answers that they're looking for, and they don't need to go out there and start tilting at windmills against a false belief that is actually it's not a problem that needs to be addressed at any level. These are regulations about products that are now 30 some odd years old, at least the vanilla products that are not in wide use, and they are covered by other aspects of the standard of identity anyway. And so we don't have to worry about them. But please, everybody, be very careful, right? When somebody comes to you with something like this, oh my gosh, the Trump administration has just decided to cut out the heart of, the food purity and food safety laws when it comes to vanilla. That's not true. That's not what it is that's happening. I'm not about giving kudos to the Trump administration for anything that they are doing when it comes to their dismantling of the regulatory state. But in this particular case, this is a bugaboo. This is a false claim that's being made, and don't contribute to it. If you do have energy and you do want to funnel that energy into something positive, please funnel the energy into contacting your senators and representatives, asking them to exempt cocoa products, and coffee from, right, the new round of tariffs that are going to be imposed on August 1st. Don't worry about vanilla. Focus on cocoa products, and coffee. And with that, I want to say thank you to everybody who's watched me through to the day. Please like, subscribe, do all the things, ring the bells on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, Pod Safe Chocolate. Go and do the same on subscribe to my profile on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn, also my profile on Facebook, like it, follow, do all those kinds of things. And while you're here, here's the homepage of The Chocolate Life. This episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, is sponsored, supported by the members of The Chocolate Life. And if you go and become a member of The Chocolate Life, you are supporting the work that we do here. There's always been a free tier since 2008. And now there are premium tiers. If you do have the financial resources to support the work I do, don't do Patreon, not taking advertising. Even if I get to the subscriber limit where I can start putting advertising on YouTube, I will not monetize it that way. I don't want ads jumping up in the middle of, they don't do it in live streams, but when you play it back, it's just really, really annoying. I don't plan to do that. All the income that I get to support this work is from the members of The Chocolate Life. And I appreciate everybody going over and doing that. And with that, I don't know what I'm going to be doing this coming Friday. I don't have a topic yet scheduled. I've got some ideas, but I haven't settled on one yet. But as I end every episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, I want to remind everybody, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, maybe you're doing it wrong. Until the next time, everybody, ciao.